Okay, well, as Tatiana said, I'm head of corporate reporting at the ACCA. That means really that two things are really dominant, therefore, in that job, and one is integrated reporting, and the other is IFRS. So I've covered, I've been covering both up to now. I wanted just to set out exactly what I'm an outline of what I intended to cover. I will look a bit at the global adoption and the reasons, the benefits that companies have found in doing that adoption, and then I'll look at some of the challenges that they found with the application of integrated reporting, and a couple of specific topics which are in a way challenges as well. So if I just move on to the first of those, I suppose I'm sure many people will be familiar with integrated reporting, but I thought perhaps it was just a good idea just to say a very little bit about integrated reporting. It is a form of corporate reporting that's trying to give a more holistic, a more complete picture of the performance and prospects of a business, so that it is not just a report of the financial progress of the business, but it is looking at its performance in a wider sense, and that is why it uses this term value creation. But it also implies value consumption or erosion of value, because it's not just about profit, it's about value. And that is across all the relevant capitals as they are referred to in there. And you can see that integrated reporting recognizes 6 sorts of capitals that could be reported on. Not all of them may be relevant to all businesses, but it thinks of the capitals in those 6 headings. A manufactured capital, so that might be the inventory, the plant and equipment, the public infrastructure that the business relies on, the human capital, its workforce, and the intellectual capital, the intellectual property that it has, and social and relationship, how it fits in with the relationship to suppliers, customers, and the wider society, the natural capital that it may depend on or affect, and the financial capital, which I think is what obviously businesses are very used to reporting. So it's a bigger perspective than perhaps other forms of corporate reporting, and it is also trying to take a longer term view of the business. So it tries to have a perspective which is both covering the immediate prospects, but also the longer term prospects of the business. And integrated reporting is encapsulated. It is derived from what is called the framework, the international framework from the International Integrated Reporting Council, and that was developed. It's been there for the last 6 or so years. In its final form, and that framework is a very high level document. It's not a long document. You can access it from the IRC's website. It contains the fundamental concepts that we've talked about, the 2 fundamental concepts I think that are critical: the concept of value creation that you're trying to report, and the concept of the multi-capital reporting, the reporting across all capitals that might be relevant to your business. So it has those fundamental concepts. It sets out some guiding principles. For example, the guiding principle of relevance, reliability, comparability, conciseness, and so on. There are a number of those guiding principles, which are very general in many ways, share a lot of similarity with the guiding principles of financial reporting, for example, relevance, reliability, and so on. It also specifies, just in outline, some content elements that they believe are important to include, and a description of the business model, the environment in which the business operates, the business's strategy, its performance in the period, the outlook for it, and the risks that it faced. So there are a number of content elements, and I think that'll be clear with Helen Perkins's presentation in due course. But there are few detailed requirements in the framework. There are, for example, no metrics included to try and measure some of those capitals. Those must come from must be relevant to the business itself, and so those are left to the business to decide what is most appropriate for them. In terms of, and indeed, perhaps I should say, in terms of metrics and so on, there are other systems of reporting on different capitals that do provide metrics. So the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, for example, or the Global Reporting Initiative. There are quite a number of bodies that might produce those more detailed metrics or suggest them. Integrated reporting is a high level concept, as I've said, and not providing specific requirements that you've got to follow, as in a standard, for instance. So what is the state of integrated reporting and the global adoption? Well, the IRC say that over 2,000 large businesses report using the framework. It is a requirement, compulsory, for listed companies in South Africa. I don't think that's true anywhere else. So elsewhere, and a lot of those 2,000 large businesses are adopting it on a voluntary basis. And I would say that's very important in thinking about the benefit, because those large businesses have all believed there are significant benefits to the integrated reporting approach, and that's why they've adopted. Beyond the 2,000 large businesses, I believe the influence of integrated reporting is wider than that. It is certainly, for example, for the in many jurisdictions, there are requirements that are very close to, very similar to integrated reporting in many countries. So if we looked at Australia, for example, their reporting there, the UK, our strategic report is very comparable to the sort of content, the sort of principles that should guide the reporting by all UK listed companies, for example. So I think that the 2,000 is, as it were, very much a minimum. The influence of the integrated reporting is wider than that. Now, why have companies adopted it on a voluntary basis? I think if we divide it between external factors and internal factors, externally, the reporting is designed to be, is communication from the company to its external stakeholders. And I think that companies adopting integrated reporting have found that this has improved the communication with investors. There is some evidence concerning the cost of capital that the investors would apply to that company in support of that. I think that one of the principles of integrated reporting is that you should, though principally designed for investors, it does recognize that there are a lot of other stakeholders who are very interested in the performance of the company, and I think they found companies using integrated reporting have found that they've provided relevant information to those stakeholders. Internally, companies report they have improved understanding about the true methods and ways in which the business creates value and what it should be aiming to do, which has led, they believe, to better strategic decision making by the company, and because I think it takes a longer term view and a wider view of its performance, a better resilience of the business, and certainly I think that's where we're certainly, I think that's true. Now, I think all that better, the internal benefits could be summed up in, and are often summed up in, the phrase of integrated thinking, so that the company, the business, employs integrated thinking to think about its strategy and so on, and then that will improve its integrated reporting when it's speaking to the outside world. So I think those are the reasons why companies have adopted. Now, I said I would cover the challenges of adoption, and for the last 4 years, ACCA has conducted with the IRC, with the International Integrated Reporting Council, has conducted surveys of the reporting by its business network participants, called this Business Network Critique Survey, where the participants get submit reports. They are looked at by independent experts, and we send a report back to the business network participant on what we think and where we think the report might be improved and so on. So this year, for example, in the last one that we did, there were 48 business network participants took part, and similarly in the other 4 years. So my challenges are principally based on this survey, and the survey looks at the compliance with the framework, the fundamental concepts, guiding principles, content elements that we've discussed, and reports against compliance against those. So in terms of the quality of the reporting, which are the bits that we found that companies have done well and find perhaps easier to do, and which are the bits that they find more difficult, which are the challenges? Well, we do find that the companies are good at communicating what the business does and the environment in which it operates, but strangely, the business model very often has been less well described in terms of concise terms that get to the heart of how value is created by the business. And in blue there, I've got a few of the, I think, what we've identified as possible top tips to improve this. And I think stick to the capitals that are crucial to your business. So as I said, there are 6 capitals recognized by the framework, but not all may be important to your business, and certainly the ones that are really important are the ones that should be covered by the business model, because business model is trying to show how the use and the impact on those 6 capitals. Keep it as simple as possible. Try to put it onto one page. I think many of the business network members have reported that they've taken more than one go to try to present that business model on one page. So be prepared to rethink and present differently. Not that they've changed their business model, they've just tried to change the way in which they describe and present that business model to the, as I say, in their reports. I think everything starts, I think, with a clear mission or statement of purpose, because that is really about what value you're aiming to create and how you're aiming to do it. The other important thing that is in that business model description, that you differentiate what your outputs are, what you put out, and what are the outcomes for the different stakeholders that you have. Corporate strategy, generally well discussed, and people are prepared to do that, but not enough, we're saying, in terms of the multiple capitals and the value creation over shorter and longer terms. And so we have some, I suppose, tips there. That commercial sensitivity, it's a matter, I think, of getting the description of the strategy and so on at the right level. To get the multiple capitals does require some, I think companies have found there needs to be cross-function working, so that the people who are responsible for reporting can't work on their own. They need to be well integrated. That integrated thinking needs to be applying across the organization, including the risk management. And value is how you define the value that you create. It may not always be quantified. That doesn't stop you, and shouldn't stop you, talking about the value that you have, and you may be only able to describe it in narrative terms. Reporting of targets and performance based on that strategy. So you describe the strategy, but then that should lead you to consider, well, what are the key performance indicators, and how well have I done against them? And though this must be information that is available, sometimes that's not always well reported to the outside world. So KPIs may not be available for all. We've in a way covered that there may not be quantification. A lot of them refer to time lags between financial and non-financial indicators. I think that's right. It can be either way. I think financial performance can be good, but problems may be building up in terms of some of the other capitals, the human capital or the relationship capital, and equally the other way around, investment in intellectual capital may be running ahead of the financial capital. Risks and opportunities, generally, I think they can be seen as two sides of the same coin. We found generally that companies are better at talking about their risks than their opportunities. That may be commercial sensitivity, but luckily, I think stakeholders and investors in particular are probably more interested in the risks than the opportunities as seen by the company. Forward-looking discussion of outlook is always, I think, a challenge, not just in integrated reporting, anywhere, but obviously clearly disclaimer statements may be a way of getting around some of the difficulties. There may be legal risks that are perceived, which those that may help. In terms of comparability, I think generally found that to be improving over the 4 years. But I suppose our tip there is really look at reports from your sector for ideas and the metrics that they're using. Those will be helpful to investors and other stakeholders if you use reasonably comparable ones there. The explanation of the materiality process is one of the requirements, and I think Helen will be talking about ACCA's approach to that in a bit. But certainly that needn't be a very complex explanation. What I think is trying to be got at is whether you have taken into account views from different stakeholders as to what's important to be reported and included in the report. This is the clear statement of responsibility, is one of the very few detailed requirements, in a way, in the framework, which says that the board, those responsible for the governance of the company, should should make a clear statement of responsibility for the report. We found consistently this is the least well done of the 30 issues. Sometimes I think people are held back if they don't comply with all aspects of the framework. They feel they can't make a statement of responsibility, or they want to express it in slightly different words. And I think the IRC is looking at that in their current revision going on. But I think those things should not hold you back from making a statement which provides a lot of assurance to users. Talking about assurance, then there it is, assurance by external auditors and so on. Commonly, the auditors of the company will provide assurance on the integrated report. It's not a requirement, but we have noticed that that is increasing among the business network members. We have also, one of the other guiding principles is conciseness. It shouldn't be at the expense of good communication, but on the whole, the keeping things short and to the point is I think a big advantage in terms of communication with investors and other stakeholders. So if we look at that, we'll see in the 4 years we've been looking at it, you can see that reports are becoming more concise. So those under 100 pages, that percentage is increasing, and the percentage over 150 pages is tending to decrease over the period. And we can see that extra assurance provided by the auditors is actually increasing among these business network members. So some things to think about there. I was just going to cover 2 topics just very briefly. One is about the boundaries of reporting. Often not discussed in reports, so an area of challenge, I think, that they simply don't talk about the boundary. I think that's because a lot of people think of the consolidation boundary for financial statements and think that that's the same boundary for integrated reporting. But of course, it can be more complicated. And I've given the example which applies to, in a way, it comes from financial statements, it's joint ventures and associated companies where sometimes they are included, and I have an example there from a South African platinum miner, Implats, does include their joint venture mines where they have a significant interest. But on the other hand, ArcelorMittal, as steelworks around the world, where they are joint venture steelworks, then they don't include them. But I think fundamentally, integrated reporting can't entirely stop at the boundary of the consolidation, or indeed of including joint ventures, because it is and will, I think, increasingly become about end-to-end reporting and about your total impact and the impact or outcome of your business stretches to your supply chain, but also to your customers. And so carbon reporting, for example, is a good one. So scope 1, your own emissions, scope 2, including those where you're using power, electricity and so on from in your business, and then scope 3, which will include the emissions or carbon footprint of your employees, of your suppliers, and indeed of the customers using your products at the end. So it can't be the boundary will vary according to what you're reporting. The other one is about climate. So it is about those scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, but the task force on climate-related financial disclosures is, I think, increasingly popular with investors, and increasingly, we've noticed increasingly reported against in terms of the business network integrated reporters, and they've done it in a different way, maybe rather brief, like Itaú Unibanco, a bank in Brazil, which reports that they've considered the issues about climate change in terms of their loan portfolio. NN, an insurer in the Netherlands, looks at it both in terms of an insurer and an investor. And Whitepro, a Indian software company, they go on to look at their Scope 1, Scope 2 metrics, targets, and indeed the Scope 3. Just on that, and then we have some. I just have some other examples here. NL, Italian-based power generation. Obviously, greenhouse gas emissions, a highly sensitive topic for power generators, with the threat of and national targets for zero emissions in the years ahead. So this is a very important issue for them. So they're explaining how the climate targets are linked to management incentives, for example. And they look at their greenhouse gas emissions and targets going ahead, and short and medium and long-term risks and opportunities that climate change presents to a power generator. Finally, Unilever, a UK Netherlands-based consumer goods company. So they look at their carbon footprint, but they also discuss the impact on the business of different scenarios, 2 and 4 degrees centigrade warming, and they look at the likely impact in terms of on 2 key products, soybeans and tea, and they look at the likely impact in terms of the costs, the impact of climate, of extreme weather events, and so on. And I think that's what's really important about the TCFD is it is not. It is, of course, asking companies to talk about their impact on climate and their contribution or otherwise to reducing that. But importantly, it is asking for companies to talk about the impact of climate change on their business. And that's the Unilever and indeed, I think the NL examples illustrate that way around. So that is what I wanted to do. I hope that's been a good sort of introduction to what we found in terms of background to integrated reporting, the extent and reasons behind adoption of the reporting method, and then some of the issues that people have found, the supporting companies in the business network, the issues that they found in trying to put into practice the integrated reporting framework that's been developed. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Helen Perkins, who will talk about ACCA's journey, a member of the Business Network, and indeed one of the longest, I think, one of the longest standing reporters under integrated reporting. But she will explain all of that anyway. So. Thank you for your attention and interest. I look forward to any questions or comments that you may have, but I'll hand over now.
Oh, Helen, we don't hear you.
Hey there, can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry about that. Just wanted to put my camera on so you could see my face, and while I say hello to everybody and upload my presentation. And thank you from me as well for joining the webinar today. As Richard said, my job on today's webinar is to talk about ACCA's own experience as an integrated reporting practitioner. And obviously, as a professional accountancy body, we're quite different from a lot of the companies that have adopted integrated reporting. I think, in fact, when we joined the pilot program for this back in 2011, we were the only professional body on the pilot program. So obviously things are a little bit different for us, and maybe not directly able to be translated to your world as people involved in reporting. But hopefully some of what I'm going to share today will be helpful. And I'll switch my camera off now you've seen me all. So as I said, my name's Helen Perkins and I'm ACCA Strategic Communications Advisor. A bit about my background and why I'm involved in integrated reporting. When the IIRC established the pilot programme, the Business Network pilot programme, I was then working in ACCA strategy team, and I was part of a sort of small cross-functional team that was involved in developing ACCA strategy to 2015. And because the strategy is quite, germane to how we account for ACCA's performance, integrated reporting came to me and also a member of our finance team, and both of us were part of that pilot programme. I've since carried on talking about strategy, and in 2016 I started working directly for our chief executive, helping her with strategy, particularly accounting for our strategy to council and now to our council board. And so because I do that, I've kind of kept the integrated reporting leadership. It is, as Richard says, a cross-functional activity. It needs to be a cross-functional activity to work. So we have a small team of people who are involved in this, certainly very involved in the beginning when we started, and that included technical experts like Richard, our head of strategic performance who pulls together all the information on our KPIs, 2 members of our finance team, and our executive director of finance and operations sponsored the project. So it is a cross-functional enterprise, but certainly I think probably as we've moved towards doing more of integrated reporting, we have started relying less on teamwork as we settled into a process. So just to explain to you where we are, we produced our latest integrated report back in July, and that was the 9th integrated report that we produced. And it is the principal way that we communicate our strategic progress to our stakeholders every year. And obviously, of those stakeholders, chiefly we're talking about members. As I mentioned, because we're a professional body, we don't have investors as such, but what we do is we take members as the proxy for our investors. And we take them as a proxy really from 2 angles. One, because obviously members and future members, they are our source of financial capital. That's where most of our financial capital comes from. But arguably, even more importantly, they are investing, I suppose, their hopes and dreams with ACCA. They're investing their careers and trusting their careers to us. So we really are accountable to them for the extent to which we enable them to fulfill their potential and develop their careers. So we always see members and future members really as first among equals, but certainly we do also take a multi-stakeholder approach to developing the report, which I'll talk a little bit about. So, as Richard mentioned, we were one of the first, I think about 30 companies on this initial pilot programme of business network reporters. And we were kind of used, if you like, as guinea pigs, as a test bed to help IIRC develop the framework and input into that framework development and experiment up until the framework was actually published in 2013. And when we started, we were quite a long way off being an integrated reporter for lots of reasons. Primarily, I think because as a professional body, you might think this strange for an accounting professional body. Most accounting professional bodies, probably up until 2010, tended to issue an annual review that was primarily a marketing document. I think it's fair to say ours was perhaps a bit more data driven than some other organisations, but it didn't tend to necessarily follow the accounting principle of balance. So there was a tendency to just report and focus on the good news and the successes that ACCA had during a year, and perhaps not include or downplay the issues and the opportunities. So before we joined the pilot programme, we had this annual review document, and we also published, and we still publish, consolidated financial statements drafted in accordance with IFRS and a corporate governance statement. So from that position, we sat down and we looked at the emerging framework, and in particular the content elements, and looked at what we actually covered at the moment and what we didn't cover. And as you can see, there were a lot of gaps. The only things that we partially covered are listed there, and the two absent things were important to look at as well. We didn't have a business model anywhere in any of our external reporting, and we didn't talk about how we compiled the report, and in particular who we consulted with, etc. So we did have quite a long journey to go on from being part of that pilot programme. And in terms of the starting point, it was really helpful for us being at that kind of base level and being there at the start of the business network process, not least because we got some very high level direct input and conversations with the people who were leading this initiative and responsible for some of the thinking behind it. In particular, Mervyn King, who was the founding chair of the IARC and who is, I think, almost entirely responsible for the fact that South Africa has mandatory integrated reporting for its reporting. Things that he said at the start really kind of chimed, I think, with everybody responsible for this in ACCA. And what Mervyn said was it should be, your report should give an insight into the quality of strategic thinking of the organisation's leadership. And I think for us that was very much a light bulb moment, thinking, aha, yes, this is something that makes sense to us and that we can do. And I think one of the reasons why it makes such good sense is because we're a very strategy-led organisation. Even before we started integrated reporting, there'd been a huge emphasis by the chief executive on making sure that absolutely everybody everywhere in the organisation, irrespective of their job or their level in the organisation, understood and bought into ACCA strategy. So for us, this really felt authentic and real. So really for us, the starting point when we were looking at how to develop the report was thinking about making that strategy central, talking about it fully, disclosing all the KPIs that we, council, use to assess our performance, and to really show that ACCA was being developed in the right way on behalf of its members and future members. And that has really been the guiding principle for us ever since, and remains the guiding principle now. So if we ever get stuck, that's the question that we go back to: are we actually doing what we've set out to do here? Just to talk a little bit about the current strategy, just to give you a sense of where we're at. You may be aware that we actually launched a new strategy at the start of this performance year, and we have a March end performance year, so this started in April. And we've now got a much more simplified strategy, which is actually going to make my life a lot easier when it comes to actually talking about this in next year's integrated report. So you might be aware our strategies 2020 had 6 outcomes, 4 capabilities, all of which had KPIs and all of which we talked about in the report. Of those 10 KPIs, only the 6 top ones are actually linked to executive remuneration, but we did disclose everything that's in the report. Obviously 10 KPIs is quite a lot if you're going into the details. So one of the things that the strategy team has done this year is actually simplify this right down. So in terms of what we'll be looking at, this is our vision, and actually we redeveloped this vision back in 2018 and used it as a stepping stone from the past strategy, which we just ended, to this new strategy, which is designed to take us to 2015. And coming back to what Richard said about purpose and objective, I think it's very clear why ACCA exists. We exist to develop the accountancy profession and the accountancy professionals the world needs. So that purpose is very, very clearly articulated through our strategy. And as I say, it does remain a constant thread from the strategy we just ended to the current 5-year strategy. And in terms of our value creation model, and this is taken from this year's integrated report, you can see the integration hopefully here in that when we talk about impact, which is our output, it is the accountancy profession the world needs. And so that's ACCA's vision kind of encapsulated in there. I'm relieved to say that it is all on one page, trying to live up to Richard's best practice. And I'll come on to talk a little bit more about this, but you can also see in that terms of societal impact and meeting our vision, we do actually have explicit reference to the SDGs that we support there, and there'll be a little bit more of that in our report next year, which I'll talk about. So just a little bit about the outcomes that we're now measuring, just so you're clear about where the strategy is heading. Firstly, one of our outcomes is to lead. And in lead, we mean not just leading our community of ACCA members and bringing all elements of our community together, members, future members, etc., but also leading in business and society, because clearly that's something that's very important to our members and our students in terms of their value, in terms of the ACCA qualification being valued. The second one is create. And obviously, we need to have unique knowledge as a professional body. So it's our USP that we actually develop valuable intellectual property that has currency across the accountancy profession. And we use this to shape the future and to create long-term value. And obviously, that's not just about the knowledge, it's also about how we transmit that and the value that we create through that knowledge. And this is our strategy framework at the moment, and I just want to spend a little time on this because it is new. It is disclosed in our integrated report, but obviously we were reporting against the final year of the previous strategy in our report that we published in July. So this is relatively new. And again, picking up on Richard's point, we're very clear about what our purpose is, what our vision is, and what our values are. And our values have actually again been slimmed down this year. We used to have 5 values, but we've slimmed them down into 3, still staying very true to what ACCA's founding principles were. So those principles of inclusivity, making sure that anybody can join the profession on a global basis, that we obviously prize integrity, and also fitting in with our brand positioning, innovation, that we are actually leading in the professional accountancy sphere. And in terms of our strategy model, you can see again that it's quite simplified. That circle on the right hand side is a much more simplified view of our strategy map than we used to have. What's remained consistent across all of our strategies is the fact that we've always measured them through a balanced scorecard of various measures, perception measures, as well as data points. And we've always disclosed all of those in our integrated report as well. And again, because we've simplified the strategy, we've actually got fewer of these to report against in the coming year. So what we actually have now are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 measures. That said, we're actually focusing specifically on 4 critical measures this year, and that's specifically in response to the COVID-19 outbreak. In a normal year, we'd have been reporting against all 7 of these. I think probably like lots of organisations, we've really had to focus in on what's most important to keeping ACCA strong and sustainable over the next 12 months while we all, seek to operate through the pandemic. And the ones that Council and Council Board agreed to focus on just this year are member retention, so whether we're keeping members with us, the perception measure on inclusion, so what's the percentage of members and future members who agree with the statement that we've got their best interests at heart? Not surprisingly, I guess in the current circumstances, the financial sustainability measure and also future member retention. So we're focusing on our pipeline. Do we have the pipeline that's keeping the organisation strong? Do we actually have the finances that to keep the organisation strong? And I think probably most importantly, do the people who stay with us find value in staying with ACCA? Do they genuinely believe that they have their best interests at heart? Just a few other things about measures. Although we are focusing on just those 4 this year, we are tracking all 7, and we will talk about all 7 in next year's integrated report, because we do use them as a basis for target setting. So they will actually be disclosed there, even though the organisation's focus is just on those 4 measures. And also something while we're on measures in terms of assurance. We do have enhanced assurance of our integrated report, because all the KPIs on the balance scorecard are subject to assurance by our external auditors, and that was before integrated reporting, because it's on this balance scorecard and delivery against it that we calculate executive remuneration. So that was really a foregoer of integrated reporting, and something that's been very helpful in giving our readers confidence in the information that we're disclosing, and also showing the link between that performance and how we actually deal with executive remuneration. So just quickly, and I won't go through this in a lot of detail, but this is really just to give you a sense that we didn't and weren't able to do everything in the first year of our integrated reporting journey. And I think I've yet to come across an integrated reporter who has managed to turn out a near perfect report the first time. And I think this is because most of the time, it takes a long time to actually shape the organisation to do these things, because you're reliant obviously on the entire organisation to produce an integrated report. So the big change, as I say, the main change that we made in the first year was that it was this, if you like, ideological shift from a marketing report to an accountability report. So including all of the KPIs, including those that we'd not achieved. We also talked about stakeholders, and I'll come on a little bit more to that when I talk about materiality, but we'd never talked about stakeholders, who they are, how we engage with them, and also risk reporting we hadn't really talked about. We also talked about future priorities as well, which we hadn't generally covered in a great amount of detail, but it was very free-form and generic in that first report. 2012-13 was quite a big deal for us, because we produced our detailed business model, and I think it was a lot of work, but I think we just about managed to get it right the first time, and since then we've only had to make kind of minor tweaks to it, but it's something that we did work very hard. And again, I think probably having been part of the pilot program and able to access that thinking direct from IIRC was really, really helpful. 2013-14 is interesting, because I think we had quite a bit of feedback from members that year. So some of the stuff that we included was as a result of feedback we'd received. So one of the things that we got from a very keen member in Switzerland was he asked for an explanation of why we use the KPIs that we use, which we hadn't thought about doing. And that turned out to be incredibly helpful, and we've kept that in the report ever since then. And the other thing we attempted then was a bit more integration, so showing how our strategy and our risk were connected and mapping risk to strategic outcomes. In 2014-15, some developments. We had risk appetite, and apology for misspelling governance there. 2015-16, not much of a content year. We focused on the online experience. Moving on to 2017-18. 2017-18, we we consulted with Black Sun, who are a specialist corporate reporting agency. They produce a lot of the corporate reports for FTSE 100 listed companies, and they did a review of our report and gave us some advice on how we could further develop it. And that was really helpful to have that kind of outside expert view. So on the basis of that, we reshuffled some of the content. We provided a bit more information about how ACCA functioned to set the scene. One of the really interesting things was they helped us to insert and integrate some of our strategy and some of our outcomes into the business model. So again, that kind of enhanced the interactivity. In 1819, on the basis of that, we didn't do a huge amount of work, and also because we knew the new strategy was just around the corner. And so last year, we actually did quite a lot of additional work on the integrated report in terms of reconciling information back. So in terms of global context, we've done a lot of work for the strategy in identifying disruptors that might affect ACCA in the future. So we factored that work in. And also some work on the UN Sustainable Development Goals that we factored in. We also updated our list of material issues to reflect the strategy work and the language that we are using to express the strategy. And we also kind of did a review of that against UN SDGs, and also, and this is something that we do every year, against the annual reports of all our main direct competitors. And what's around the corner next year, and we've actually started this work now, is more detailed mapping of the strategy to specific UN SDGs. And so I think you'll see more disclosure of that in next year's integrated report. But hopefully that gives you a sense of the fact that it is a journey. This is something that's never done, because your business is always changing and the external environment in which your business is operating is already changing. So it's a constant process of development. In terms of the challenges that we've experienced, and I think these might be common to lots of organisations, I think fitting it all together was the first challenge in the way that's clear and consistent. And I think that's something that we've improved at doing over time. Certainly keeping it concise is an ongoing challenge, and it tends to be made a bit more difficult by different readers having different definitions of what they consider concise. But to be honest, I think anything sort of under 60 pages is decent enough. Certainly we've partly got around that because we've moved to having an online experience, which obviously makes it much more self-service, and people can just look at the areas that interest them and look at it and read the report in the order that interests them. So I think that helps as well. I think initially, though, again, we've kind of got around this, the completeness and the reliability of data, and making sure that it was consistent and consistently presented year on year. We weren't flooding readers with data points. Initially as well, we didn't always have prior year comparatives. But this has gradually settled down over the years. So now we can show this kind of consistent journey, and people can kind of see over a 5-year period what the trajectory of performance is for particular KPIs. And finally, and this is the thing I'll finish up talking about, materiality, because in integrated reporting terms, it was completely fresh and new concept for ACCA, and we needed, a fair bit of help with this because we hadn't got the expertise and the skills in-house. So just to finish up talking about our approach to materiality. As accountants, you'll all be familiar with the concept of materiality in financial reporting. In integrated reporting, it's rather similar, but it's a wider definition in that it's about the relevance and significance of a topic or matter to substantively affect the organisation's ability to create value in the short, medium and long term. So a much wider definition than the financial definition, and probably much less precise because it doesn't necessarily have a pound or a dollar figure attached to it. so as I say, this is something that we really didn't have in terms of knowledge and skills in the organisation. So we hired a consultant who worked with us, who'd worked with lots of other leading integrated reporters, notably Van City, who are a Vancouver financial services company, a cooperative, who'd won awards for their kind of initial integrated reporting. And he came up with our materiality process, where he kind of interviewed people across the organisation, reviewed norms, surveys, peer reviews of other annual reports, and came up with a list of potential material issues of 700 issues, which was a bit mind-boggling. Me and a couple of other people at ACCA sat in a darkened room for a couple of days and clustered and grouped those down into a shortlist. And originally we had 25 issues. And these 25 issues were designed to address that question at the bottom of the slide. Are those 25 issues potentially having an impact on ACCA strategic objectives, our business model, or one of the more key resources we rely on to deliver our objectives and our business model? And every year we've consulted on those issues, and also every year we revisit them, both in light of the strategy that we're using, in light of what's happening in the outside world, and check back to see whether we have actually got the right material issues. And these are the 21 material issues we consulted on last year. And as I say, we do revisit these, and we had a couple of reintroductions in 2019 when we did this exercise. Community involvement, which we'd previously not had for a couple of years, that was something that came up quite strongly in our internal employee survey as particularly relevant and important to ACCA's employees. So we introduced that back in. And also environmental sustainability. And you might wonder why that wasn't in there in the first place. The reason that it wasn't in there prior to 2019 is we did actually we did have that on our original list of 25 issues. And right up until 2017, it was always rock bottom of material issues when we asked people internally and externally whether it was important to ACCA's value creation. So we took it off the list in 2017. But then certainly, obviously as the window to achieve the SDGs is shrinking and down to 10 years, some of the climate issues that we're facing, the resources issues that we're facing, we decided in consultation with stakeholders that it would go back on the list for the coming year. And just to show you finally what we do with all that, we survey people and we use our leadership group, so that's our executive team and their direct reports, to give us an internal view and ranking of these material issues. And we ask members, and last year it was members of our network panels around the world, we invited them to take part in this as an online event, and ask them to survey all of the issues. And what we do is we publish those two sets of rankings in our integrated report. And it's always quite interesting and I think quite helpful for people to see the difference or the similarities between our internal and external rankings. And I think we've been quite lucky. I think we have always had, quite strong correlation between, what concerns members in terms of ACCA's development and what our senior employees feel about that. So that's really helpful. The other thing that we do with that is, in terms of the importance of the issues, we use that along with the content elements as a sense check to make sure that we're giving enough real estate to all of those most important topics in the integrated report. So it's useful from that point of view as well. And just finally, very quickly, if I've got time, just to talk about the benefits for ACCA. I think probably principally enhanced trust and confidence from members. It opened a fresh kind of dialogue with members in a way that we hadn't had before on our strategy, except for obviously with Council and International Assembly members. So it gave them that stake and that input into that. And I think because we've been completely transparent about the strategy and how we're measuring it, it has engendered greater trust and confidence. In parallel with that, we've also seen improvements in satisfaction and brand power measures. And this obviously can't all be attributed to the integrated report, because there's a lot of very specific activities that we have around driving our brand. But over the time of the last strategy, we moved satisfaction up by nearly 10 percentage points, and we moved the brand power measures of ACCA being viewed as innovative and forward thinking and shaping the agenda of the accountancy profession by 11% and 10% over the life of the strategy. So I think it is an important part of maintaining ACCA's reputation for leading, if not the only one. And obviously for us, external accolades, you may be aware we won Accountancy Body of the Year again this year at the International Accounting Bulletin Accountant Awards for this, and that was for the second year in succession. But when we first won it in recent memory back in 2016, it was because one of the judges had read the integrated report and actually contacted us and asked us to enter for the awards, that we actually ended up scooping that title. So I think in terms of wider reputation, it's been really important for us. We also featured as one of the 50 organisations in Black Sun's 2017 What Better Reporting Looks Like. So that, again, that was great for us. And I think overall the reason why it's great for us is because it emphasises that ACCA practice is what it preaches. I think if we tell other organisations and our members that integrated reporting is the way forward, it's so much more powerful if we're actually doing it ourselves and we're aiming to do it properly. So yeah, I think that probably is the most important thing, that we are genuinely practicing what we're preaching. I think that's all I wanted to say. So thank you for listening, both to me and to Richard. And I will stop speaking now and let other people speak and ask some questions.
Richard, Helen, thank you. Really, this was really a great and fantastic and exciting experience to listen to you, to know on the insights, what is happening around the world, and how our very much heartily loved association is involved with the integrated reporting movement. And what specifically touched me was the key goal of becoming the #1 accounting body in the world, and mentioning on the last page that ACCA walks the talk. I guess that's the most important thing of what the integrated report should provide for all of us. I think we could and should stick to the schedule. So it's like 7:35 in Moscow, and we have around 25 minutes to discuss the questions. And we have 2 questions from Irina Ivashkovskaya. Irina, may I ask you to ask them, if you don't mind.
Microphone. Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, sure we do.
Good evening. I also admire that report. It's really very useful, especially for us who work in academia, and I'm a head of School of Finance of the leading Russian university, High School of Economics, and we are now with the project of making the master degree program with Coursera totally online on business analytics and strategic business reporting. That's why we have many questions, but I already put 2 questions on that list. And maybe I'll start from the second one, which is about the future of integrated reporting, because it's now competing with some other frameworks for non-financial reports. So my question is for both presenters. Do you expect, guys, that integrated reporting will become dominant framework for non-financial reporting, at least for publicly traded companies, in the nearest future?
Yep. Okay. Well, perhaps I should start. Perhaps I should start with that one. I think you're right. There is a lot of emphasis at the moment on non-financial reporting, and we can see, for example, in the European Union that they are they're making rapid steps towards improving the non-financial reporting that European listed companies, perhaps slightly wider than listed, may go to large public interest entities. We don't know. We don't know yet, but I agree. There's a lot of emphasis on that. I think one of the differences with integrated reporting and some of these other frameworks for non-financial reporting is that it does try to integrate the financial results with the financial performance and prospects of the business with the other aspects captured therefore by the different capitals that are relevant to that business. So I think what we said in our submission to the European Commission on their non-financial reporting consultation was that we did want to see a sort of reporting which tried to provide a complete picture of the company's performance, and not just the financial one, which is obviously detailed in the financial statements, but other aspects, and to in a way integrate those two things. I think much of the emphasis for non-financial reporting is about sustainability and climate change, rightly so. Clearly a very important issue that we're all facing on a global basis. But I'm hoping that some of these initiatives about non-financial reporting are going to provide that link where you're trying to reach better corporate reporting, where you have a integrated report supported by the financial statements, which set out the performance in financial terms, and supported by perhaps other more detailed statements that are reporting on their innovation with their intellectual capital, on their key performance metrics in terms of their workforce, for instance, those other capitals that we talked about. So I do hope we are going to end up with some of this non-financial reporting initiatives develop, that we'll end up with something closer to integrated reporting, covering all of those aspects of a company's actions.
Thank you, Lord. And I have another question. It's based on my personal experience. I was lucky to be a member of the meeting of World Intellectual Capital Initiative, which exists like multinational network. And last autumn in Frankfurt, they invited several large-scale companies, European and banks, which already have some experience in integrated reports. And there was a debate between the CEO of Dutch bank, big one, with the integrated report, which they also call impact statement, and the EY representative, who was official auditor of that Dutch bank. And my question is, so I was listening to that debate and discussion, and the client, represented by the CEO of the bank, put a statement in front of the audience. Still, EY is using the same technique to make audit and assurance for non-financial reports, as if it was just financial report. So do you expect there would be changes in framework, methods, technique for assurance and auditing non-financial reports in the future?
Okay, I'll have a go at that one as well. Yes, I will expect some changes. The International Audit and Assurance Standards Board is working on has been working on the issue of what they call emerging reporting. So they're not restricting themselves to the audit of integrated reports, but they're looking at reporting outside the financial statements generally. And I would expect that there will be innovation in the methods. I think in a way it's the metrics that where it begins, and perhaps so that as Helen described for ACCA currently, the key KPIs are audited by our firm of auditors, but I think that for a assurance report on the integrated report, they will have to go a bit beyond those metrics, which is as I think you're saying, the familiar territory for auditors, looking at numbers and working out how they've been derived and following the chain of data that leads to the KPI in the report. But for many of these reports, it requires more than just KPIs. We need as we've indicated, the content of the integrated report is much bigger than that. So they will need to develop new methods, I think, for tackling that. I think what we've seen so far is fairly limited assurance. So where there is a specific general report on the integrated report, this has been done at what auditors call a limited assurance, rather than the reasonable assurance which is applied to the audit of the financial statements, so that it's been at a lower level, which is a sort of level which is framed in negative terms. So nothing has come to our attention which indicates that anything is misleading in the integrated report. So it's in a way it's a negative assurance. And as has been said, sometimes the assurance is on the KPIs only, and doesn't go beyond beyond that. I mean, all of those, I think, help stakeholders, investors, members, whoever the report is directed to. It provides assurance and confidence in the report, whatever can be done. But I would absolutely expect these things to develop and extend over time. Absolutely right.
Thank you so much.
Dear Richard and Helen, may I ask you some questions, if you don't mind? What would be the first steps that you would suggest for those who become interested in integrated reporting to take? So to get a deeper understanding, or any references, maybe, what should be the starting point or the roadmap to becoming an integrated reporting preparer?
I'll take that if that's okay, and hand over to Richard. Not wishing to sell ACCA products necessarily, but we did last year develop an integrated reporting starter course, which gives familiarity, and also a practitioner course, which I think are very helpful, and people will be able to find that on ACCA's CPD resources. That said, I think you can do it in an informal informal way as well. And certainly our starting point was taking our existing report, taking the IR framework, which isn't a long and complicated document, and it is very principles based, and working out to what extent your current reporting actually meets those requirements. So technically, the preparer side of things, I think, it's a process-driven exercise. One of the steps that I didn't talk about that is obviously a prerequisite is the buy-in from the organisation, and that's obviously the most difficult thing to get. For ACCA, we had very clear signal from the chief executive that she wanted us to be part of this movement, to be leading on it. So obviously, if your chief executive says, right, I know this is now how we're going to report, that's fine. So I think sometimes it's actually making senior management aware of the benefits and the advantages, and having that senior leadership buy-in and leadership on it, that tends to be the most difficult part of it, particularly as Richard says, because outside of South Africa this isn't a mandatory process at the moment. Obviously, with the initiatives that we've been talking about, with the EU's interest in it, the wider reporting may become something which is more mandated. But I think until it does, it is about building consensus in the organisation and generating that interest and that buy-in in the process.
And well, what should be the expected not the payback period, but the timing of the initial investment before the first really good integrated report would appear? So is it possible to do it in a quick leap or in a huge leap?
It very much depends, I think, on the nature of the organisation. Obviously, I can talk about ACCA's experience. I think because we made that immediate shift from not kind of talking about our entire strategy and disclosing all of the KPIs to being very transparent about it, that payback for us in terms of reputation was very, very quick, in the sense that I had people from other professional bodies actually saying, whoa, I can't believe that ACCA has shared all this information. And in actual fact, and I think some of the members that we originally consulted in that first round of stakeholder engagement and materiality were quite worried about the information that ACCA was sharing, particularly on risks and on future performance targets. But actually, I think it's only ever been beneficial for us, because I guess it's like everything. You can disclose this information, but unless an organisation can replicate it and use it for its own benefit, and every organisation is different, there's a limit to how much harm you're creating by disclosing that information in the first place. And for us, it's only ever had a positive benefit, and that positive benefit was really from the time that we published the first report. And I think obviously for us it is different to a commercial organisation, because so much of what we're seeking to do is to build reputation for ACCA that's then reflected onto the reputation of our members and students in the marketplace. And that's not something that we've ever quantified, but it's something that we can sit down and we can draw a line between the amount of information that we've disclosed in our transparency and that reputational impact and effect that it's had.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think that in thinking about what are the steps, I think it is. Helen is absolutely right. You need to begin with support from the top, from the leadership of the organization, and I think it does need to be clear that. For many organizations, they are disclosing more than perhaps they're used to, and disclosing things that ideally, giving a balanced picture of the things that have gone well and the things that have not gone so well in terms of their performance against their strategy and targets and so on. But it is a communication exercise with your stakeholders, and I think that it does give greater confidence, and I think that's what people have found. And a lot of those stakeholders know that not everything has gone well. Why should it have gone or everything gone well? And I think there's greater trust and so confidence in the organisation if that balance of good and perhaps less good news is included in the report. But that is something that I think people, the management of the enterprise, need to be absolutely clear about at the beginning. There will be more disclosure of things than perhaps they're used to, or that would meet the minimum requirements of the law, for example, in the country in which they operate.
Just picking up on that point, it's a really excellent point, Richard, about discussing the negative and information that seeps out in this world. I think again, ACCA has been quite lucky because we've been doing this in parallel with digital developments and digital revolutions, and obviously the massive increase in social media that's happened over the time that we've been doing integrated reporting. And I think probably, if you as the organisation don't talk about your risks and your challenges, you can no longer obscure them from the market. They will find a way out on social media and other channels. And if you talk about them in your own reporting, it is a way of you telling the corporate side of the story, and actually, talking about the decision making that went into those issues. So I think probably integrated reporting and this idea of creating balance and consistency and comparability over time is something that's a very good antidote to the risks of social media for corporate organizations.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yep.
And speaking of the, yes, Richard. Yes.
No, you go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the issue of management and probably the wider governance bodies adoption and buy-in is a great point to start, without which, well, everything is doomed to fail. When we hosted the Russian regional framework revision meeting, there were really great comments from Irina Vashkovskaya on specifics of who should be responsible for the report. So if we don't get the buy-in from the board of directors or another highest body responsible for oversight of the strategy and its execution, all the efforts related to developing the integrated report under which the signs of the board of directors should be made, the effort will be rather bleak, I guess. And we have one more question from Anna Vysotskaya, and I guess this could be the last question tonight. Anna. Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Perhaps you should read it out. Perhaps you should read it out, Ivan. Yeah.
So Anna asks, how do you speakers, Richard and Helen, see the role of academics in the process of moving towards the IR worldwide? I was not asked the question. I'll have an answer also, if you may.
Okay, shall I start on that one, Helen?
Yes, please,
Richard.
Yeah,
I mean, I think both. I mean, I always think academics have several sides to their jobs. One of which obviously is teaching the students, and in particular teaching students who are doing business courses or starting on accountancy training and so on. So I think that's obviously integrated reporting, we hope, will be part of academic and the ideas of integrated reporting and the value of transparent communication with your stakeholders and investors should be part of the teaching. There is the other side, I think, or always think of in terms of academics, which is the research side, and I think that there is considerable scope, and there has been research to support some of the, for example, to support some of the benefits claimed. I've talked about the cost of capital and other benefits that influence adoption and that companies have found in doing this form of reporting, and indeed the integrated thinking that lies behind the reporting. So that I think both in the teaching and in the research area, I think there's important contributions from academics to be had.
Just to add to that, Richard, it's not necessarily academics, but talking about universities in general. I think one of the things that we've noticed when we're actually reviewing reports is that there's been quite a strong uptake from universities in using integrated reporting for their own annual reports. And in the UK, there is a group of universities who are actually collaborating and almost forming their own little business network to do this. Universities like Edinburgh and University of Durham, which is my old university. And I think there's obviously some synergies there. Carol Adams, Paul Druckmann, who was the original chief executive of IRC, both taught or teach at Durham. So I think that's obviously flown through into how Durham deal with their own corporate reporting as a university. But certainly my feeling is that there's been a lot of resonance with the integrated reporting movement with universities. It seems that universities find it a very helpful framework for talking about the impact and the value that they deliver to society. And certainly my experience is a lot of universities are doing integrated reporting very well.
Yes, I suppose that's a good illustration. Both ACCA and the universities are essentially not profit-oriented organisations, and so integrated reporting, though it's often framed in terms of investors and financial capital, are actually it works very well for these organisations that are and indeed parts of the public sector have been using the integrated reporting model because it is about value creation, and the value creation can be in all sorts of different forms depending on the objective of the organization.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think because of the emphasis on the value that's on integrated reporting, it's not just the value that's created for the organisation, it's the value that's created for wider business and society. I think that very much, resonates with the public sector and also with, as you say, educational institutions like universities and indeed ACCA, because it is all about that wider benefit and whether you're making a positive impact on society.
Right. So over to you, Ivan, I think.
Actually, my point was already said by Helen, and I'm grateful to her for that. because indeed becoming a report preparer would be, it would have a really synergetic effect for the promotion of IR in the country, because first of all, a hands-on experience would be gained in terms of what it makes to prepare the integrated report first. And the second, I only can quote the last paragraph of Helen's presentation, so it's about walking the talk. So if you promote the integrated reporting and the integrated reports, you should make one. And I think it would be a really great example of the IR adoption in the country if Higher School of Economics could provide in foreseeable future such a report to support the movement. So it's 8 o'clock in Moscow. It's I guess 6 o'clock in London. And we were really pleased, Helen and Richard, to see you with us tonight. It was a really great talk. Your presentations and your insights were very helpful. I hope that we might become really good friends and hopefully meet each other. And next time we will tell you on our progress. So what we've done here in Russia in terms of developing our capacities and promoting the integrated reporting framework for the benefit of the profession, for the investors and the society at large.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the invitation to come tonight. Yep.
Yes, thank you so much, Ivan, and thank you for leading on this and organising it. And I know that you also took the lead on organising one of the framework review meetings for the IRC in Russia, and I know they were very grateful because they do rely on networks giving them that international input, because it is it is an international framework and it's only as useful as the accountants who are using it find it. So thank you for that, and thank you for your leadership of the topic. It's really quite inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Well, I was really inspired by you, actually. Well, through the integrated reporting program you have at ACCA. So I recommend everybody who's here on the call tonight to check the ACCA integrated reporting program. It has 3 tiers: the introductory part, the foundation, and the practitioner part. They're really great in terms of gaining the understanding and establishing practical experience in preparing the integrated reports. And on the side note, I had a discussion with the technical team from the IRC, the council which makes the integrated reporting framework, and they told me that the revision process is in due course. All or most of the recommendations are considered, and the draft will appear in November, and we expect all. I guess we all expect the final document to arrive in December. So the end of the year will be really interesting. Thank everybody who was tonight with us. I wish you well, and let us move on our way towards integrated reporting in Russia and globally. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight.
Yes, thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you all. Have a lovely evening, and good luck with your reporting.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Richard. Thank you for presentation, and thank you very much all who participate today evening. See you next time with the CCA.